Meet George Jetson. He and his family debuted in 1962 with visions of the future. But what does that future really look like, and should we be worried? The Jetsons is a classic Hanna-Barbera cartoon series like Yogi Bear, Wacky Races, The Flintstones, and Scooby-Doo. It made up 1/3 of the classic Universal Studios theme park ride. And Kanye West is a big fan too. But 60 years later, what inventions and gadgets did the Jetsons get right about...
Stop! I'm you from the future.
The future? Do I finally find a hat that suits me?
I am from a future where I've watched every single episode of the Jetsons, including the movies, and I need your help to stop the Jetsons from ever happening. And also, no hats will ever suit us. The future is a terrible place!
The futuristic family live in Orbit City, a view of future America where courtrooms have commercial breaks and the skies are jammed with flying cars. The Jetson family are George Jetson, his boy Elroy, daughter Judy, and Jane, his wife. George works at Spacely Sprockets, where he canonically works 3 days a week.
Yesterday I worked 2 full hours.
His official role is professional button pusher.
Take a look at my button-pushing finger. What do you think?
This seems to suggest a cynical view that people of the future will be lazy and entitled whilst things get done on their behalf, something other media suggests will happen. It's actually quite a bleak future. Even the most minor tasks are reduced to mindless button mashing, conveyor belts, and sliding chairs. I know, I was going to make a video about all the inventions in the Jetsons that came true. Like flying cars, because they're cool. I don't want to stop this from happening. Even in the past, that's old news. There's literally thousands of articles covering that topic. Roombas, smartwatches, video calls, self-driving cars that crash themselves.
Of all the dumb cars.
It's been done. This is about a future that is too dangerous to allow to happen, rather than some fancy inventions like a dial that makes the buildings go up and down. Oh yeah, I've always wondered, with all those sky buildings, what's on the ground?
The answer will shock you. It's the ground.
The question of what's under all these suspended buildings and floating islands is one that people ask a lot, and the show makes it no secret. It's just the ground. One popular fan theory is that in a shared universe twist, the Flintstones actually live on the ground level, whilst the Jetsons live above them. Perhaps a sort of meta-commentary on a class divide, with the poor living like primitives below and the elite living at the top. Except, in the movie The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, they actually travel back in time to the Stone Age and have the world's most ambitious crossover.
But I'll bet you Wilma's making Jane feel right at home in the kitchen.
However, in one episode, we do see evidence of homelessness as somebody appears to be living on the ground level. So, there is a class divide created by the tall towers of the future. I mean, all this stuff seems rough, but what's so terrible about the future? Black people. Let me finish. There are no black people in the future.
Why did you not gasp that time? Why aren't you reacting? Oh my god!
Do we still get flying cars?
Eddie!
The original run of the Jetsons ran from 1962 to 1963, and in all 24 episodes, there is not a single black person in the show. Not even in a crowd shot. But why? Following World War II, there was a renewed optimism for the future, coupled with the launch of Sputnik, which is a funny word, it really is. It created a fascination about future technologies. This is seen in Googie-inspired architecture like the Las Vegas sign, the Space Needle, and the Atomium in Belgium.
I'm here at the Atomium in Belgium. It's an enormous, futuristic, atom-shaped building built during Expo 58, designed to exhibit advancements in science and technology to make a better life for mankind. And it's also got an enormous ball.
As well as these comics by Arthur Radebau, which present a future whilst still looking very 60s, you can see the clear influence the Jetsons took when creating its own future. But these also depict a future with the absence of black people. Journalist Matt Novak said, "The Jetsons was expressly written as a post-war family living the American dream. An American dream that just so happened to be thrust into the mid-21st century. Who then was the American dream meant for? The uncomfortable truth is that black people were systematically excluded from post-war institutions that allowed many other white families, like our fictional Jetsons, to achieve that American dream. The scarcity of black characters wasn't exclusive to the Jetsons. It was the same industry-wide across many shows in the 50s and 60s. Even in other Hanna-Barbera shows. We all too well understand this sort of thing to be a product of its time, but I guess to set the Jetsons in our own future turns this product of its time into something more dystopian. In this era, the few black characters we did see were often seen in subservient roles, like the mammy stereotype, such as Hattie McDaniel's Oscar-winning role in Gone with the Wind. The maid/cook/nanny character is often portrayed as older, with a larger figure, is a happily devoted servant to a white family, but would be a little sassy with the occasional quip.
Well, Annie, why don't you draw up a chair? Then you'd be more comfortable and you could hear everything that's going on.
I would if I thought I'd hear anything worth listening to.
You would.
And in the Jetsons, they purchase Rosie the Robot, an all-in-one maid/cook/nanny, but they're warned that she's a less desirable model.
The old girl's still eager, isn't she? But of course very Homely.
She lives happily with her new family and isn't afraid to give the occasional sassy remark.
It's bad manners to leave the table until after you've had your dessert.
Disturbingly, it seems in this 1960s vision of the future, what few positions were available to minorities have been replaced with AI. By all accounts, non-white people do exist in the future, just not in the Jetsons city.
Aren't you going to finish your coffee, Dad?
Nope. Came out too strong this morning, but don't throw it out. Some pygmies from Africa may show up and want to dip their spears in it.
And the show alludes to the civil rights movement, but with Martians instead.
The girls need me for their protest meeting at the United Planets building. I get to carry a sign, Martians go home.
Oh, that's space racism. Spacism! Wow, maybe we should do more to diversify our characters. Like, do we both need to be a white guy?
I'm you! I'm you from the future! We've covered this! What's wrong with you?
As you can probably tell, the future of the Jetsons is really just the 1960s, but with more robots. It's frozen in time. The Jetsons returned for a second series being brought back 20 years later in 1985. And this time, the characters weren't all white people. Like this guy, Abby Andromeda. There we go, a black guy. The future is saved. Except in that last shot where they accidentally animate him as a white guy.
You were so close!
The 80s did a lot to try to free up the Jetsons, moving it away from the stock sitcom plots that were often lifted from other shows, stuffy mother-in-law jokes, and entire episodes dedicated to why women are terrible drivers.
What's the problem?
Women drivers, that's the problem.
The 80s series also tried to fix a huge problem that the 60s series created, that Jane Jetson might have been a child bride. You see, in the 60s series, we learn that George is 40 years old.
You should live to be 150.
I've got 110 good years ahead of me.
We learn Jane's age in the very first episode, and it requires far less maths homework.
Don't be smart. You know I'm only 33.
George is 40 and Jane is 33, an age difference of 7 years, which wouldn't be unusual were it not for daughter Judy.
If I was only 15 again.
If Judy is 15 and Jane is 33, that means Jane gave birth when she was 18 years old. Was Jane pregnant at 17 by someone who was 25? Now, marriage and consent laws differ from state to state, and this wasn't an unusual thing back in the 50s and the 60s, but by the 1980s, it had become a bit more taboo. So the 80s series tried to retcon this age difference, like an episode about how George dated Jane in college, steering them both to be about the same age. But then in a much later episode, Judy says,
Mom was pretty young when you were married, wasn't she?
Well, yes, but that was a long time ago, and things are different now.
This is an interesting admission. Like, is the show itself acknowledging that some of the things from the original series might now be a bit dodgy in a modern light because it was a long time ago and things are different now? And this scrubs away the college prom retcon in the process. So, to recap, George is 40, Jane is 33. Judy is 15/16, so therefore Jane gave birth to her first child when she was about 18. But hey, the minister that had wed them turned out to be a fake, another 80s retcon, and their marriage never counted in the first place, so if she was a child bride, she's not anymore. In the eyes of the Jetsons, it's something much worse. They're unmarried parents.
Daddy, how could you?
How can I show my face at school?
God, imagine being unmarried parents. Unthinkable. It's unthinkable. I can't even think it. Yeah, me too. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Going from the 60s animated sitcom for adults into an 80s kids cartoon, The Jetsons seem to benefit from this change with improved ratings.
If your beast doesn't stop molesting my poor Jezebel.
Please don't say molesting in a kids show. But it was short-lived. The Jetsons movie from 1990, whilst had some really nice sequences blending CG elements with 2D characters, it was a huge box office bomb, and after that, the Jetsons' vision of the future is only really remembered today as a punchline.
We're from the future, the magnificent far-off year of 2002.
Really?
I mean, does anyone remember George Jetson's famous catchphrase?
Jane, stop this crazy thing!
Jay, stop this crazy thing!
Stop this crazy thing!
Did you not hear me out there?
Dad, are you
Go
all
to your room, Elroy.
But what happened?
Go to your room!
Except it's not Jane Stop This Crazy Thing. It's Hooba Dooba.
Ooba dooba, ooba dooba, ooba dooba, ooba dooba, ooba dooba.
Ooba dooba.
Ooba dooba, that was some trip.
I guess after Scooby Dooby Doo and Yabba Dabba Doo, they really thought that this oobly doobly catchphrase would be just as timeless and memorable.
And now back to the Eddache Rangers.
Oopy poopy. They're fucking dead.
An unfair but easy explanation of the Jetsons is just the Flintstones, but set in the future instead of the past. But the Flintstones was ironically a lot more inventive. If the Flintstones wanted to, say, clean the floor, they'd use a mammoth's trunk like a vacuum cleaner. Whereas in the Jetsons, it's just robot hands doing the same thing. In this case, the Flintstones was just a lot more creative and imaginative in how they reinterpreted modern things in a Stone Age setting. Look, animal abuse is just funnier than robot hands. That's just how it is. But by your own admission, the Jetsons did correctly guess some inventions. Well, yes, with a little stretch, they did predict some stuff. But in other ways, it was pretty obvious. Take the video call, for example. Whilst Zoom meetings and Discord video calls are normal to us, it didn't exist in the 1960s, ergo, a correct prediction. Except the idea of the video call has existed for almost as long as the telephone call. Here's a video call in Metropolis in 1927. Here's an illustration from 1910 showing a video call. And here's one from 1900. And here's one from 1879. At this point, Alexander Graham Bell was still alive.
Hello.
So by the time the 1960s rolled around, the idea of a video call wasn't a new one, but the naturally assumed next step in evolution after the telephone and the television. However, despite this, there's one small moment that actually kind of shocked me with his brilliance. A fleeting and deeply insightful moment, and it's to do with flying cars. Go on. In one scene on the ground level, a bird walks along and says,
"With all the traffic in the sky these days, the only safe place for us birds is on the ground."
This surprised me because, intentional or not, it shows a very real consequence to the so-called utopian future of technology. If cars could fly, then the birds would not. If we look at this 2015 report for instances of birds hitting planes, about 70% of bird strikes occur when the plane was less than 500 feet in the air. But at 3,500 feet in the air, those collisions go up to 90%. So, if we suddenly crowd the skies with flying cars, they would be crashing into birds all the time. And the ones that survive may retreat from our skies forever. Technology is evolving too fast for nature to keep up with it, and it can be dangerous. The Jetsons have done some soft-handed environmental messages, but this one line is the smartest social commentary the show has ever made, and I don't think they meant to do that.
I guess us birds will just have to go underground.
Okay, fine, you've made your point, but I have two more questions. One, do we have more friends in the future? Oh yeah, our friend circle has completely doubled. We now have 2 friends. Sounds exhausting. And 2, why now? If you want to stop the Jetsons from happening, then why not go back to when it aired in the 60s?
The TV show was just a warning. We have to stop the real-life, actual George Jetson from ever being born.
Ooh. In 2021, there were some viral posts about how George Jetson was going to be born in 2022. These posts include a date of birth being July 31st, but there's zero mention of that in the show. Likewise, there is no mention of what the current year is for the Jetsons, but the closest we get are hints that it's been 100 years.
After a century of brilliant scientific progress, you'd think someone would invent a decent fly swatter!
Official promotional material do state the year is 2062, which is exactly 100 years from the show's original airing in 1962. This is confirmed in the first issue of the official Jetsons comic book. So, if we presume that this is the case, and George is 40, then he would be born in the year 2022. And all those viral posts and articles would be absolutely correct. God, imagine they were all wrong. Imagine that all it took was for someone to watch the episodes to find out the actual age of George Jetson.
I took a youth serum. I'm really an adult.
Sure you are, son.
See, I'm really 38.
He's 38! George Jetson is not 40 years old, he's 38 years old. He wasn't born in 2022, he's going to be born in 2024! This year! Whoa. So the real George Jetson could be slippy slidey out of someone's vagina right now? You are my biggest shame. I want to throw you down the stairs. This could be another attempted retcon to close the age gap between him and Jane a tiny bit, and as for what he said during the Daredevil thing, he doesn't explicitly state his age and was probably just rounding up a bit.
That's why I came back to this year, to stop George Jetson's birth from happening. I've come to take your balls.
Me?
Yes. We go on to become the father of George Jetson and the terrible future that comes with him. We have to stop this now.
Can't I just have a vasectomy?
We can't take any risks, but don't worry. I've brought a hammer.
But what about the 2017 Jetsons movie?
The what?
In 2017, there was a new Jetsons movie guest starring WWE wrestlers. And I don't know why.
Everybody listen. Big Show's been frozen in ice for 100 years.
Given that the present day of the wrestlers appeared to be late 2015, based on this being the last time Sheamus was a WWE heavyweight champion, this means 100 years later, the future of the Jetsons is actually set in 2115, and George won't be born for another 53 years.
Since when do you know anything about wrestling?
Wrestling? I don't know what that is. Yes, it's possible that the Jetsons are always in a ever-shifting future, like a mirage that's always the same distance away, no matter how close we get to it. Or that the wrestling movie isn't canon at all.
Except I've never actually made anything time travel.
Yes, you did, Elroy! That's how you met the Flintstones! Come on, Eddie. Just put your balls on this cinder block and let's just get this over with.
But maybe, just maybe, we should stop living in the past or the future and just live in the now. What do you say? If you do this, I'll give you a flying car. Hang on, there's actually one other huge discovery I've made about the future. Did you notice it? Let me explain. It began when I actually flew over to Belgium just for that one shot, but I filmed even more while I was there that I just had to cut for time. Therefore, I made it its own mini travel vlog and made it available exclusively on Nebula, who are the sponsors of this video. As for the big discovery, look, Nebula is right there. I guess the Jetsons really can predict the future after all. Nebula is my video streaming platform that is creator-made and creator-owned, where together we can do so much more on our own independent platform than YouTube would allow. For example, Nebula has produced originals and exclusives like the recently released short film Identities by Jesse Gender, about two strangers waking up in a mysterious space with no memories and no escape. There's also The Ballads of John and Yoko by Lindsay Ellis, a documentary about what happened after John Lennon's death. Unrated by Maggie Mae Fish, a deep dive on the history of sex in films. And The Getaway, where a group of creators must travel America, but someone among them is secretly betraying them. And this is just the start of a massive slate of content already available and coming soon. And it's all because of you. When you sign up, it directly supports myself and some of the best creators out there, completely ad-free, and enables incredible high-quality works that compete with traditional media that you don't want to miss. You can sign up monthly or yearly, but Nebula are offering an incredible deal for a lifetime membership. Just one single payment gets you everything Nebula has to offer, and you have it forever. That's how Nebula are able to invest in original creator-owned projects. And we already know that Nebula will exist way in the future, thanks to the Jetsons. So sign up now to nebula.tv/Eddache or use the link below to get 40% off your annual plan. That's little over $2.50 a month. So thanks, Nebula, and I'll see you again in the future.
Uber duper, if that's all it needs.
Special thanks to my patrons, including Steph L, Zion Craze, Mel J Free, Kiwi Conductor, Bubbles, J Slin, Vinifex, Drifter Star, Beamer Tectonic, Rusty Robot, Sesune Wave, Teletoon, Glenn Sugden, Mo Alcasemi, Josiah, Louis Wild, Matthew Smith, Joel Jennings, Clam Wamsley, Nathan Chawinati, Brett Halford, Trenton Gyrone, Brandon Sires, Aronis, Benjamin Allen, and to all my future patrons. See what I did there? And if you would consider supporting me, then please do so on Patreon.